Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Waxonomy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Altman. Thank you for tuning in. Now, today, I have with me, again, a very special friend of mine, my friend Dylan. Dylan, say hello to the folks at home.
Hello to the folks at home.
Perfect. Just as we rehearsed. So, for those of you who have been listening, Dylan was in a previous episode where we took a deep dive into Led Zeppelin's discography because they are a band that we essentially worship, for a lack of a better word. And we really had a good time taking a deep dive, talking about the albums, what they mean to us, how we discovered them. And we figured, why not do another episode where we talk about another band that we value so much. And that band is... Dylan, do you want to do the big reveal?
Radiohead.
Perfect. So Dylan's correct. That would have been weird if I was like, oh no, we were supposed to do the Police.
Roxanne! I honestly, can I, like, not to go on too much of a tangent, but that song is so goddamn annoying.
Yeah, I have trouble appreciating Sting's voice.
I like it when it's more... I like Fields of Gold.
Okay, that's fair.
But,
wait, that's his solo stuff, right?
Yeah, but, like, when he's just, like, fucking just going for it, I'm like, alright, chill.
Yeah. I mean, I could kind of sympathize with people who dislike Dave Matthews Band. I don't really have a problem with his voice, but I know a lot of complaints stem from, like, people just, they can't stand his voice when he sings. So,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm okay with it, so they could have their Sting. That being said, Sting rant aside, we decided to do a pretty structured approach to this, to talk about Radiohead. We decided that we were going to attempt to rank. Now, I'm highlighting attempt because I had a very difficult time doing this.
And we're highlighting structured because I'd say, our Zeppelin talk went, like, to anybody who's listening who stuck around for that whole thing, I commend your patience.
You probably could have watched the movie Lincoln and still have... you still would have been on physical graffiti. So we thank everyone who was able to actually sit through that whole thing. We're going to try and actually make it more structured and maybe make it more concise. But essentially what we did, now I want to preface by saying that even though we love Radiohead, I like to think that the two of us are not really music snobs. We're always looking forward to celebrating music and not really making other types of music seem inferior, or, like, if you have a favorite song from a band and I prefer another song, I'm not going to judge you for that. And I feel like, at least in the Radiohead community, there are some fans that are, they judge within our group. So I won't go into that. I don't want to make anyone feel left out. But the way I kind of structured this episode was, I figured by ranking this, we could kind of create a field guide to Radiohead. I'm sure 1 in 4 people that you meet in your life will probably mention Radiohead if you talk about music. It's not, we're not special by saying, oh, we listen to Radiohead. It's a very popular and successful band. This is simply our way to celebrate the band and try and see what we can do with it. Dylan, is it raining by you or something?
Is that...
I heard like a static.
No, is it... Hang
No,
on.
it's good. It's good now.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I told you not to take a shower during the podcast.
Sorry. I just wanted to be naked and talking to you.
You mean nude?
Oh... Nice.
Okay, anyway, sorry about that, folks. Yeah, but anyway, I thought that it would be kind of a fun opportunity to format this in a field guide where maybe you are interested in learning more about Radiohead, possibly listening to them, but you don't really know where to start. I kind of organized and made notes about these albums surrounding that format, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Dylan, what was it like forming your rank of these 9 albums? How did it feel?
So the first 5 were pretty easy.
Wait, like
And then,
starting from the bottom or starting from the
no,
top?
from the top.
Okay.
And then because when we got to the second half, it got a little murkier. Just because like I'll be totally honest, like I find the albums in this category pretty interchangeable. Just because I've spent just such a disproportionately like more amount of time listening to the albums in the top half than the albums in the bottom half.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I have more of a detailed and nuanced, I guess, understanding of the albums that I really like, and less so of the bottom 4.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. With that being said, would you like to start by choosing your number 9 slot?
Okay.
All right, here we go.
So, I'm gonna say my number 9, and again, this was tough because, again, 8 and 9 to me were pretty interchangeable in terms of just sort of lack of, huge impact on me. But I'm gonna say number 9, King of Limbs.
Okay. Were there any particular reasons why it didn't work for you, or?
I just get a little sick of the like bleep bloop, we love computers, Radiohead like sound, and frankly, like I was glad to see it go during Moonshaped Pool, like when they dropped those first couple singles.
Sure.
And so like I like Lotus Flower a lot. And here's and this is the thing, you know what? I honestly think Pablo Honey could just as easily be like in my number 8 slot. I mean in my number 9 slot. Just because both albums have like one standout song, the rest is like pretty forgettable. Though I like Lotus Flower a lot more than Creep, which is the standout song from Pablo Honey, I find the rest of the sound of King of Limbs just gets fucking annoying.
Right.
And Pablo Honey is just generic Brit pop, Brit rock from the early 90s, basically. So
I'm going to assume that you put Pablo Honey as number 8?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the slight opposite. So I went with Pablo Honey as my number 9. Now, I want to preface by saying I don't think that any Radiohead album was really bad. Like, I'm sure someone out there would appreciate it. Because Pablo Honey is your classic 90s British alternative sound. It's not too far off from something like Oasis or Blur. They have the song Creep, which is obviously, the staple song that most people know about from Radiohead. There's a couple highlights. I actually do enjoy the song You, which starts off the album, and another song called Stop Whispering. Those are fine. I mean, they're all pretty like normal 90s rock songs, but you learn later on in Radiohead's progress that, they're better than this. And I went with King of Limbs as my number 8, slightly better than Pablo Honey because I just thought there were a few more songs I enjoyed. I've made this as my analogy I wrote down was if Kid A was a nightmare, King of Limbs is like a dream in the forest, but it doesn't pack the same punch. So it's nothing too special. They have a couple good songs. Lotus Flower is good. Codex, Bloom, etc. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't that great. What are you doing? Are you eating?
No, I'm just like I just got the bottle of wine out.
Oh, okay.
Clinking around. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. It's that crisp microphone.
Yeah. So even and like you mentioned, like even a bad Radiohead album is still like a pretty good album. And similarly, even like a forgettable Radiohead album still pushes the boundaries in terms of just prowess, like technical prowess. And by that, I'm specifically with the King of Limbs, I'm referring to Johnny Greenwood, who is a multi-instrumentalist, extraordinaire. Not only is he like incredibly skilled at a bunch of different instruments, like arranging symphonies and orchestral pieces, he fucking wrote the software that they use to sample all these electronic loops and stuff for the King of Limbs.
Exactly.
Like, he built the software. It's just like, what are you not good at except looking human?
Yeah, he just kind of looks like he definitely looks like a robot.
He looks like social anxiety personified.
But like through AI.
Right. Like a Westworld social anxiety robot.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm not going to spend too much time on number 9 and 8, but that's it. So we're going to move on to our number 7 slot. I'll go for this one. So I wrote in red font, all albums from this point I consider a B+ or better as an album. So this was actually kind of like what you said. It got kind of murky because I really do enjoy all these albums in a certain way. So it was kind of difficult to figure out what was the best. So I kind of did a formula of how much I listened to the album versus like in a context of the band, how was it? With that being said, my number 7 pick was Amnesiac from 2001. Now I actually love this album a lot. For those of you who don't know, the songs on Amnesiac are very reminiscent of Kid A, and that's because these songs were also recorded during the Kid A sessions. So when they were trimming down Kid A, they decided to make a separate album with these leftover songs, and they're fantastic. Dylan, you're getting a little staticky again. Is that it? Might be me.
I don't hear anything on my end.
It's probably my fault.
I assure you, I'm not doing anything. I think my connection might be shitty.
All right. Well, it's fine. It's fine. It's not bothering me too much. Yeah, but this album is really fun to listen to. I actually like listening to this when I'm either traveling. So if I'm on like a long car ride, or if I'm on the train, or I'm doing homework, this is definitely a fun, kind of dark album to listen to. There's a lot of highlights. One of my favorites is Pyramid Song, which I know you're a big fan of, Dylan. Another good one is You and Whose Army, which has a really strong build up. And then there's Knives Out, I Might Be Wrong. These are all really good tracks that I feel could have fit in the Kid A sessions, but they ended up just not being a part of it. These are great. I think as an entire album, it doesn't really fit a theme, and it doesn't seem as cohesive, which is why I placed it lower on the list. But it's definitely something I highly recommend.
I agree with you pretty much completely, to the point where 7 for me is also Amnesiac.
Nice.
I think that it's a perfectly fine album. I think again though, for me, like, I think I definitely have to be in a certain mood to listen to it, like, for more than maybe 4 songs of it. And that mood is difficult because it's like, I would describe that mood as being like a dark, but a different dark from Kid A.
Yeah.
You know? Where, like, yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, it's fine, and I love Pyramid Song. And we were talking about that before. Like, Pyramid Song sounds like you're literally, like, drowning in a moonlit pond in the middle of the night, and you feel like the cold black water fill your lungs. Other than that, it's good, like, ambience, and it's good. It's kind of like I feel like I always thought Daydreaming from Moonshaped Pool was very much like a continuation of a lot of that sound.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to. And I'm gonna have. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have on Amnesiac, honestly.
Yeah, I mean it really is like a pretty decent collection of songs, but it doesn't really stand out as something to describe. Like we're having a lot of trouble describing what it is, and I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the problem.
I actually
Not a
like
problem, but
Hunting Bears.
Hunting Bears is a fantastic one, but it's got yeah, I think it's got, I don't know. I mean, it's fine. Dylan, what was your number 6 slot?
Can you guess?
Is it Hail to the Thief?
It is Hail to the Thief.
Nice. Well,
And
Dylan,
so,
why'd you place it at number 6?
So again, after this, I'm going to have much more detailed answers. Sorry, I dropped a coin there. I'm going to have much more detailed answers from after this album onward, and that's just because Hail to the Thief is just not an album I revisit very often. I like 2 + 2 = 5. I like, what's it called? See, I mean, it's not even like, it's, maybe I should have put this a little bit lower just because I don't know if, I think Hail to the Thief, I've listened to it a few times all the way through. It just never really kind of like, I always forget that,
Myxomatosis?
Yeah, that's good. And then the rest is like, it's pretty good. I just kind of forget about it.
So, it pained me to actually put this at number 6. I think this is an extremely slept on record. So this is their 2003 effort following the release of Kid A and Amnesiac, and I think a lot of it has to do with I don't even know, but it's.
I think it's because there's no like hits from really either of them.
Well, here's the thing. When I'm looking at the track list right now, and I took notes. So one of the drawbacks of this album is that it's stylistically all over the place. So 2 + 2 = 5 is a fantastic opening to the record. It's got it's kind of like a return to the classic guitar rock sound, but then they also jump into all these weird techno ballads, and it goes all over the place. Now, when I listen to this album, I have many favorites. 2 + 2 = 5, Sit Down, Stand Up, Go to Sleep, There, A Punch Up at a Wedding. So There, and A Punch Up at a Wedding, for the past 3 years, that has been in my top played songs on Spotify. This is actually probably one of my... This album has some of my favorite songs from Radiohead, but unfortunately, it's just not a cohesive record, which is why I placed it a little bit lower. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the same thing for me too. And I also think that I just think that yeah, I mean, like, again, it's the same thing. Like, I think just like you said, like, I think every album by Radiohead has a distinct sort of coloring and an image in my mind when I think about them. Kid A is this weird, dark, twinkling, nightmare, like you said. Pablo Honey is worse Oasis, honestly. It's got an Oasis-y kind of Britpop. And then, etc. But Hail to the... And even Amnesiac is dark and sticky.
Yeah, Hail to the Thief is very much a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's just... There's no, like... I don't... There's nothing I immediately think of when I think of Hail to the Thief.
That's fair. I like I said, it's one of the drawbacks. It just kind of goes all over the place. But that being said, if you do have the patience to sit through it, there really are a lot of good tracks on it, even though it doesn't really fit within a theme. Which, we're holding Radiohead to a higher standard because they do go out of their way to make sure their album is groomed to a certain theme, and they kind of missed it on this one. But yeah, and actually I saw this one funny comment. I think it was on Reddit, but the only thing that someone wrote for one of these, no, it was on YouTube. One of these songs was pretty guitar heavy. So all they wrote was Zeppelin on Zoloft. I thought it was hilarious.
Zeppelin on Zoloft.
All right.
That's a good one.
Shall we move to the next album?
Let's do it.
I'm really curious to see what. So for those of you listening, we didn't reveal what we put. So I'm really curious to see what Dylan has if we match up.
I think this is where I think we'll start. Our paths will start to diverge just a little bit.
Probably.
So I'll say that my 5 and my 4 spots, I struggled with kind of ranking them. And at the end, what I should say is Radiohead. I listened to my first like Radiohead renaissance was when I was like 19 or 20. It was a little bit later than most people start listening to Radiohead. And I remember, I think I was a sophomore in college. And
yeah, same.
I listened, and that was the year that Moonshaped Pool came out. And I remember just listening to like the hell out of Radiohead. Excuse me. And I have certain sense memories attached to each album because like I was listening to each album at a different sort of phase. And my rankings of these albums are heavily influenced by the phase of time of my life that I was listening to them. So, with that being said, number 5, I put Kid A.
Same.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, Kid A. I love Kid A. You know, a 5 here is almost a little unfair to Kid A, just because I feel like it takes away from it a little bit.
I mean, it's fair to say that this is a monumental album.
Yeah, and so are all of the albums that are in my top 5 for this. But Kid A, I particularly remember listening to it. Studying for like Orgo 2 at like 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And like walking from the library in the cold, like in the beginning of like spring semester, January, February, like that time of year. It's freezing. It's midnight. It's dark, and you can see, you can still see your breath in the moonlight, and you're walking back to your dorm, and you're freezing. You're listening to Kid A. That's what I associate with it. That sort of frigid, dark, sort of isolated sound. It's not something to approach lightly, obviously, just depending on your mindset. But I really loved listening to, how, like, the production on that is so good. Like, you'll hear all these, like, weird squeaks and whirs and whatever.
And like utterances.
Different parts of your headphones just kind of like you'll just hear some kind of creature there or something, some made out of electronic instruments or something. And but the reason I didn't rank it higher is because I think because of how abstract it is, because of how, I guess, intentionally unapproachable they made it. It's something I really have to like be in the mood for, and I can't just listen to like a song from it. I have to kind of listen to at least half of the album all the way through.
Yeah.
So that's my Kid A spiel.
Well, I kind of share the same sentiment. So the best way I could describe it, and I remember I texted you this once. This album is an icy nightmare.
That's pretty good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like, I mean, you could just tell by the artwork how like you're looking at this snowy mountain, and there's like an eruption far away, and like you could see even in like the front part that there's like it looks like there's a glitch in what you're looking at. The whole thing is very, very unsettling. Fun fact, I actually can't listen to this at night or else I get nightmares. Because there was one night I actually so I'm gonna reel back a little bit. I had my Radiohead renaissance freshman year of college through sophomore year. So I remember it was the beginning of my spring semester. My roommate was blasting Kid A.
Wait, sophomore year?
So sorry, no. So freshman year, my the person that lived next to me was blasting Kid A, and I was like, "Hey, what is that?" He's like, "Oh, it's Radiohead." And I was
I
like,
see.
"Oh, you mean like Creep?" And he's like, "All right, you have a lot of work to do." So I listened to Kid A quite a bit, and I liked it. And then I listened to like OK Computer and the Bends. These are all I feel like are like the starter kit to Radiohead. But then there was one day that I was listening to it late at night. I think it was like 2 or 3 a.m. And I was listening to the national anthem and I kind of like fell asleep for a little bit and then I slept through How to Disappear Completely, Tree Fingers, Optimistic, and then I woke up to In Limbo and all I could say was I was in a deep cold sweat. This was this is not for the faint of heart, my friends.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful album, and the fact that they jumped from their genre was fantastic. I think it's great that they really ventured off into this, and they executed it pretty well. There's a lot of good songs, such as "Everything in Its Right Place." It's a beautiful song. I could listen to
Oh, yeah.
that. I mean, it's got like a warm, fuzzy feeling, and if you're wearing headphones, it kind of feels like it's hugging you in a way. From that point on, I feel it kind of takes a turn for the worse. In
Really?
like no in like a mood sense.
Oh, okay,
Kid,
okay.
I hate the song Kid A.
Really?
Not because it's a bad song, but it just makes me feel really unsettled. Like I don't
Yeah.
enjoy listening to it.
I think it's supposed to, though.
Like it sounds like if you're like a young, like it makes me feel like I'm a young kid who went downstairs to play video games like on a Friday night when my parents told me to go to bed, and then all of a sudden the game became sentient and started harassing me. That's what Kid A feels
That
like.
is a super specific analogy there.
Yeah. National Anthem, great song.
I love that song.
It's a great song. But
I'm
it,
surprised you didn't wake up to like the big old like horns and everything just brah at the end of that song. Like that would have woken me up.
I don't know, man. It could have been, stage 3 of the sleep cycle. But
True.
How to Disappear Completely is a really great song. It's kind of a return to what they were doing previously, kind of like guitar ballad, but with a nice twist to it. Tree Fingers through In Limbo, I really don't think are that memorable to me, which is why I think that this album kind of ranks lower because after that point, Idiotech, Morning Bell, Motion Picture Soundtrack, those are 3 really solid songs. I love Idiotech. It's very apocalyptic. Morning Bell has like a nice groove to it. Motion Picture Soundtrack kind of sounds like it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a
Yeah.
pretty fun song to listen to. Overall, I think it's a great album. I think I rank it lower at number 5 because there's a few songs I don't like. And overall, it's a really unsettling album. So I appreciate the artistic aspect of it, but it's not an enjoyable thing to listen to in my life. So yeah. Shall we
Yeah.
move on to number 4?
Yeah, oh, I just want to say, I think in the daydreaming video, again, daydreaming, I think is a spiritual sort of descendant of a lot of the Kid A sound, but from what I can recall in that daydreaming music video, at the last bit, Tom York opens like the door out into these like snowy mountains, and for just a split second there, it kind of like the way that the camera is sort of framing the mountains, it kind of looks like the Kid A album cover, which I thought was pretty cool.
Does it really? I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I mean, or it made me think of it at least.
I wouldn't be surprised if they tried doing like an homage to their previous work.
Right, and from what I understand, this album was hella polarizing when it came out. Like people were just like what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense if you're, but it's hard not to, in hindsight, see that progression sort of take hold, like even from the bends through
Right.
through Kid A.
Yeah, I mean, like, at least for me, like, for me, having not really lived through the progress and just kind of looking back at it, after after listening to OK Computer, I could kind of see why they ended up in Kid A. But if I was living in the time that this came out, I wouldn't. Sorry, I was living at the time, but I wasn't a fan.
Yeah, we were like 4.
Yeah, we were 4. I'd be concerned if there was a 4-year-old that listened to Kid A.
And had an opinion on like,
yeah,
the artistic direction.
Yeah, like it's.
I'd be just such a shitty kid. Well, I thought that it was awfully reductive of Talking Heads and New Wave.
Oh God, jeez,
So shut up.
It's very very derivative of post-punk.
Just shut up.
No, well, actually, yeah. For those of you listening, because I was trying to make this like a field guide. This is one of their first efforts where they incorporated a more technological approach with synths and loops, much to the contribution of Johnny Greenwood, who is, as we mentioned before, very tech savvy. Not really sure if he's human. They refer to him as Kid A in the lab. So if you're into more of the techno stuff and a lot more of an eerie, darker vibe, this really is kind of in your wheelhouse. Shall we move on from this?
Yeah, sure. And what's also important to mention is that Radiohead up until this point was with some deviations and weird stuff mixed in, up until this point, still very much a guitar-driven rock band.
Right.
Standard to the '90s alt-rock scene, and this was 2000, the year 2000, Y2K, whatever the hell you want to think of it as, and like this was, people did not know what the hell they were doing. By literally, there's like 2 songs with a guitar on it, and they have 3 guitarists in the band. So
yeah, they really, I mean, it really is kind of impressive that they jumped to a new sound so drastically. And I mean, I think they executed it well in hindsight, but it really is interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll take this one. So for my number 4 slot, I was back and forth with Kid A on this one. So I actually crossed out the rank a few times, but I finally went to my original ranking. I put down their sophomore effort, The Bends, released in 1995. So I'm a huge fan of this album. I don't really listen to it as much anymore, as Dylan and I were kind of discussing. This was part of, like, we had our own Radiohead renaissance where we kind of took a deep dive into everything. This was one of the first albums that I listened to where I listened to it from the beginning to end, and I was like, oh my God, there are so many awesome tracks. There's The Bends, Fake Plastic Trees, High and Dry, Just, Black Star, Street Spirit, Fading Out. These are all really good songs. They're very similar to the like 90s bit that they were doing, but they kind of added their own angst and slightly depressing flair in their songwriting, which is what made it such an important album in their progress. So as someone who was able to look at it retroactively, this is something.
Retrospectively, right?
Retro in retrospect, whatever. Retro. With hindsight,
Sorry, I just see
it's easy.
With your whole
Whatever, man. I'm pretty illiterate. Just let me have this. I think sonically, I can see how this was like the beginning of them venturing off into different things. I think they maintain the same like band setup. You have your drums, vocals, guitar, bass, all that stuff. But in their songwriting, they kind of hit up new topics, added a couple other different effects. I thought it was produced really well. I I don't really have too much to say about it in regards to what the album is, but I hold this album close to me because it's one of the first Radiohead albums that I really just couldn't stop listening to in the first place. I kind of outgrew it. I moved on to other things that I felt were a little bit more ambitious and fun to listen to. But this is easily an album that I would recommend anyone who's even thinking about listening to Radiohead. This is easily the first starter kit choice that I would put on someone's desk. Like if you want to get into Radiohead, this is like a really easy, accessible introduction to the band, and then you could kind of move on from there, where they get more experimental in a more technological sense, or they go more orchestral. However they go.
Mm-hmm. So, this is where we diverge.
Oh boy.
So number 4, I'll get to the bends later, but number 4, I don't know what you're gonna think of this, but
I know what you're gonna say. Yeah,
Moon-shaped
a moon-shaped pool. Okay.
So I love this album, and I think again going back to where I was when I started listening to this album, it was actually like right as it was 2016. So this was sort of the lead up to its actual release. And I remember when Burn the Witch came out as a single.
Yeah,
and it was it was just in the beginning of spring. I as if I'm remembering correctly. Like
it was,
the end of March. And something about the like the staccato like string thing that Johnny Greenwood's arranging in the beginning, and the sort of like the upbeat but sort of like daunting nature of it was a very, I don't know, it seemed like the sun came back out, like coinciding with the beginning of spring. And like, I think I probably would venture to say that maybe with the exception of In Rainbows, this might be Tom York's best vocals in the discography.
Yeah, he does have a pretty ethereal voice in this one.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of the way they mix his voice, or maybe he's just getting older and there's just more of a different character to the way he sings. But like, I just love how just kind of like in Burn the Witch, it just kind of like soars over, and daydreaming is kind of like it's kind of like he sounds like a in a good way, kind of like a wounded animal.
Appropriately like a wounded animal, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, so like True Love Waits is probably the best vocals on it, I think.
Yeah.
I would say. But my favorite song on this album, and I listened to it probably 1,000 times that summer after it came out, is Deck's Dark.
I remember when you first sent me, or I think you sent me a text, and you're like, "Hey man, have you heard Deck's Dark yet?" And I was like, "I don't know, probably." And you sent me it, and I was like, "Oh no," because I confused it with Desert Island Disc.
Yeah.
But that's a good song. That's a great song.
That song is just such a, I don't know. It's so like it's a pretty simple song, just like, musically and lyrically, but something about that end, like like that like groove that they go into.
Oh yeah,
super good.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Now I know when I said, I feel like this number 4 slot was a quick jab at each other, because I know the Bends is a very special album to you, and you know that A Moon-Shaped Pool is a special album to me. So I guess we're kind of even on that. But it's an exhibition match. There's nothing.
Yeah. And it's subjective. And the thing is, it being in 4th doesn't mean it's that much less like
it's
impactful.
It's like you're comparing all-star athletes together and saying that you're the 4th best all-star athlete. You're still an all-star athlete.
Right. And you would, if you're a football player, you would kick the shit out of like a junior varsity player or something. Just absolutely wrecked them. But so Moonshaped Pool's got to be my number 4. Again, it's close, but I love how balanced everything sounds. It sounds robust. It sounds ethereal. Again, I'm so glad that it wasn't another like beep boop. I'm quirky Tom York and quirky Johnny Greenwood. Look how cool we are. Departure from that sound. I loved a lot of the other stuff they did around this album, like that. The Paul Thomas Anderson music video that it's just Tom and Johnny, and they're playing the numbers.
Oh my god, I love that album. I mean like, that music video.
Between those like willow trees, and Johnny's got this weird like drum loop machine.
Yeah.
And it's just them that
he probably made in his garage 20 minutes before.
It's his. Yeah, exactly, and it's just they're both just playing electric guitars with like no effects on them basically, or maybe just a little compression, and then Tom York's voice just sounds so good in that, and so that's Moonshaped Pool for me.
Great. Well, you did serve it justice. So, okay, what was your number 3 slot, Dylan?
So, okay, again, this is where the space between them got even less. It was even harder to sort of like rank them. Though I'm not upset with the way I did. Number 3, I gave to In Rainbows.
What?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And I'll preface this by saying my favorite Radiohead song is on this album. And I think we both know which one that is.
Yeah, 15 Step.
Yeah. I love this album, but when it came to ranking the top 3, this just kind of went in third by default, just because, like, I just don't listen to all of the songs as much as I listen to all of the songs on the top 2, but I listen to the big songs from In Rainbows, just as much as I listen to the big songs from the top 2. Does that make sense?
Right. No, I know.
Like
I know
the
what you're saying.
filler material, I kind of pass over a lot more on.
But like the songs that you do like are you love.
Yeah, I mean Reckoner, I only really started loving that song in like 2018, like senior year spring. But it like in my Spotify wrap up for the decade, it was my number 4 played song of the entire decade. At the end of 2019. So clearly I was just fucking looping that shit over and over again.
I mean, it's a beautiful song.
It's just hypnotic. I think just the balance of sounds and the way it just kind of envelops you towards the end is just absolutely spellbinding. And yeah, I mean, like, you can't really get much better than that. Did you know that guitar riff was Tom York trying to be John Frusciante?
Really?
Yeah, which is why I thought it was funny that you mentioned Josh Klinghoffer.
That's pretty ironic.
Playing the live... Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that guitar riff in both playing and sound is like 1,000 times better than John Frusciante, in my opinion. It's much more nourishing. It's much more... again, balanced. But yeah, I mean, Weird Fishes is awesome. When we saw that live, that was incredible. Videotape.
And we were screaming Ed.
Yeah, and Videotape is cool, especially with that secret hidden rhythm. I almost gave In Rainbows my number 2 spot just because of the aesthetic of it, like sonically, but I'm not finding myself listening to like Faust Arp or like 15.
No, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the I'm gonna touch on this later, but I think the two of us, we do have a very similar music taste, but I know that you do listen to, you pay attention to the lyrics quite a bit, and I'm really bad at listening to lyrics because I just kind of listen to the sound of it all. Like I'm aware of lyrics being sung, but I'm not really processing and trying to interpret what it means within the context of the song or the album. So I think that's probably why you do prefer other songs and other
That's funny
albums.
because I don't know if I'm not sure if I even like the first time I ever hear a song or an album, I'm paying attention just to the instrumental
Well,
part.
yeah, no, but
And
I've had conversations with you about songs, and you would talk about the lyrics, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, but
yeah,
like that string section," and you'd be like, "Well, yeah,
right,
yeah, that
right.
too, but like these lyrics are great," and I'd be like, "Oh, I didn't realize those were the lyrics," which is I wish I was better at that, but I don't know. Shall I put my number three out?
Yeah, yeah, go, yeah, do it.
This one is I actually changed this last minute. I almost
Uh
put one that would have been very controversial, and I
huh.
think I think I would have been uh, hung in effigy, burned in effigy or something if I did
I
it.
think I
But
can already guess what your number one is.
yeah, so my number three pick is a moon shaped pool.
Okay.
Uh, I didn't want to do it, but I had to think about my progress of listening to Radiohead and the achievements that Radiohead has accomplished. A moon shaped pool. Um, now that title is gonna forever be tainted because I saw on, you know how Reddit has the like make fun of bands that you actually like, where it's like you're supposed to like shit talk different bands.
You mean like
They
the implying music is good
no,
Facebook page?
something like that. Yeah, yeah. So someone made a comment. They're like, I had a bran muffin this morning and took a moon shaped poop, and I.
Ah, okay.
So I'm always thinking about that. That being said, I wanted to put this at number two, but I think I was favoring it a little bit too much and not really being objective about it, even though music is subjective. Uh, I discovered this album the same time as you because we were pretty much listening to Radiohead and learning about them at the same time. And concurrently with that, I was going through kind of a difficult breakup with my girlfriend at the time. Now, this album pops up in the summer, only a few months after this happens, and I thought that this was pretty appropriate. Um, One thing I could say about this album is that it is probably the more depressing album of everything that
Yeah.
they've done, but not in a way that it like turns off listeners. This is probably their effort with the most orchestral nuance. Uh, they use a lot of strings in the background for songs like The Numbers and Burn the Witch. These Burn the Witch is the beginning to the album, and as you were saying, it kind of has this like eerie forecast for the rest of the album. It's like the staccato, and it kind of ends. Oh, hold on a second. You're being all staticky again. Can you talk for a second?
The teeth, the tongue, the teeth, and what? Tsetse
Maybe
fly.
you have to add comments every now and then to shut it down.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, just add a couple like mm-hmm. Uh,
Mhm.
you said it. So this album I really like. For those of you who like a more slow paced, a movement away from the traditional '90s rock, or I
Well, you
there
can
there
say that about literally like every Radiohead album for the
Well,
last
no, I
20
mean,
years.
well, I think in Rainbows and OK Computer touch on classic '90s rock, but with their own
Yeah.
special twist. But a Moonshaped Pool is their most beautiful record, in my opinion. I don't think it's the best, but I find myself revisiting this album quite a bit. I usually listen to it beginning to end without fail. Some of the best songs that I've heard from any band, if not just Radiohead. The Numbers is a beautiful song with a pretty epic build up, if you remember. Burn the Witch, as I said, is very eerie. Daydreaming is so beautiful. I mean, there's so many great songs. Present Tense. Um,
I'm looking at the
Dex,
track listing again, and they really like hammered in the D alliteration from tracks two
yeah,
through
Brendan with
four.
Daydreaming. Dex Dark. Desert Island Disc. Full Stop is pretty techno. So like they still incorporate their synth and loops, but they do it very well. It has a fantastic build up. Glass Eyes is very depressing. I'm not really sure what it's about, but I know it's sad. The Numbers, Present Tense, True Love Waits, which is actually a song from OK Computer Sessions, but they didn't put it in the album.
Yep.
Tinker Tailor, Soldier Sailor, Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief.
Thanks for committing to that.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, honestly, this song was appropriately released, and I listened to it at just the right time. I was pretty sad, and this is also a really sad album. So I really resonate with this, and I'll always hold it close to me. I recommend it to anyone who enjoys more of the symphonic elements of music because they do incorporate that. Johnny Greenwood has dipped his toes quite a bit in scoring movies, which is why he has a relationship with Paul Thomas Anderson, who directed There Will Be Blood, which is another fantastic movie. But this is not a movie
Johnny
podcast.
Greenwood wrote the orchestral soundtrack to.
For the whole thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
As well as the Phantom Thread from I think a couple of years ago.
Right. Yeah, I think this. Yeah, and also just to add a little bit of context, I believe some of the songs from this album were written shortly after Tom York separated with his partner, who was cheating on him. So
was she cheating on him?
I believe so. Yes.
Oh shoot! Because she died like a couple of months after this album came out.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
Damn.
Yeah. Tom deserves a spa day.
Yeah.
He looks very tired. So. Yeah. Did
you see him on Stephen Colbert like a few months ago?
Oh God, yeah. He looked like he just woke up from a nap.
What idiot publicist does he have to put him on Stephen Colbert?
I don't know. I don't know. I actually I didn't think it was too bad, but I guess it spread the word about Anima.
Yeah, but it's just like I don't know. It's just two completely different energies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right, but anyway, I'll make one last remark about A Moon-Shaped Pool. It's one of my personal favorites in the context of Radiohead. It's it's good. It's not their most iconic, but I really like it. I highly recommend listening to this if it's snowing, or I guess any precipitation at nighttime while you're studying or getting ready for bed. This is a really calming album, and it's very beautiful, so I do highly recommend it. Dylan, do you want to start us off with your number 2 slot?
Yeah, I mean, I did number 3 if you want to do number 2.
Okay, well, this was the one that I was almost going to snub the number 2 spot with the Moon-Shaped Pool. OK Computer.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm not going to disparage this album at all. It is, I'm going to say, I wrote notes on this because I actually haven't really took a deep dive into this album in a very long time. So, back in 2015, 2016, I had this album on repeat. Some songs that I love in particular, No Surprises is one of my favorite songs. It's a very beautiful song. I would buy a glockenspiel just to learn it. Karma Police, everyone knows Karma Police. It's a fantastic 90s song. Exit Music for a Film, that's another fantastic one. Lucky. I mean, every song here is well known in some light. Let me just pull up the track list one more time. So, OK Computer came out in 1997, right after their second album, The Bends. Now, this is another left turn in a way because it goes from kind of angsty 90s teenager to a cold, dystopian, futuristic sound, and it's quite infectious. I actually had to... I looked at this album this morning, and I re-listened to it, and I kind of forgot how solid this album was, and I kind of understand why this is a number one pick for a lot of people. It's a very cohesive album, and I'm gonna say I think this is probably their most solid album. In an aspect of, does the song fit within the theme of the album? The answer is always yes for each track that I go down. I don't know if you share the same sentiment, but yeah, let's see here. This has a lot of '90s rock notes, and hold on a second, Dylan, you're staticky again. Give me a oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Give me another oh yeah to balance it out.
Oh yeah.
baby. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this Paranoid Android. Funny story about this song. I know that this is a pretty popular track. I actually didn't like Paranoid Android when I first heard it. I had trouble with the movements within the song because you have like the first part and then it kind of goes into a different groove and then it goes back. It kind of goes all over the place. When I first heard it, I wasn't a fan, but my patience in music listening kind of evolved, and I understood that songs are able to kind of move all over the place and still be the same song. Uh, Karma Please, No Surprises. Lucky is a fantastic one. This is probably my favorite. I can't really pinpoint what my favorite song is on this, but if anyone is curious about Radiohead, either listen to this album or the Bends. You know what? I'm not gonna say any more because I know you have more to say about this album, and I know you appreciate it.
Do you have more? I mean, like,
I don't know. I mean, I thought I had a lot to say. This is a great album. I think it's fantastic from beginning to end. But it doesn't move me emotionally like my number one pick. I think from a technical aspect, this album is fantastic in their progress as a band. This is a monumental album for '90s rock music or just alternative music in general. I don't have anything bad to say about it. It's just I don't feel as strongly about it as my number one pick, which is why I made it number two.
right. So I'll start with my number two because it's not OK Computer.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll get to OK Computer. So number two for me is the Bends. And that's simply because I think when I was first getting into Radiohead, I actually listened to the Bends more than pretty much any other Radiohead album.
Right.
It's not because my tiny little pea brain couldn't understand more complex Radiohead. I just like the songwriting in this a lot more. I found it more accessible, more easy to just kind of like casually listen to while doing other shit, or just like appreciating. Fake Plastic Trees is it's a very I should say, like, I always feel as a Radiohead fan, I always feel like a normie for saying that I like, Fake Plastic Trees.
No, but see that's what I'm trying to eradicate.
Yeah,
You could enjoy any song of Radiohead's.
Exactly.
You're not a poser. You're not a music snob. Listen to music because it gives you joy. We're not here to tell you what to think about any album. This is actually a display of why you really shouldn't rank any of these, because we do have different opinions. We have different feelings towards these albums, and you could make your own memories with them. But anyway, I don't want to take away from your bend. So
my bender.
Your bender.
I mean, I find it's all like the songwriting. Yes, it's still they're still technically in their like Britpop phase, but I think the songwriting on this album is so much more intelligent and well thought through than anything Oasis did. Blur is I think a lot better than Oasis, but still this just has a much more, I don't know, just runt of the litter, but in a cool way, a vibe to it. Like, even I love Planet Telex, like, just from the very beginning. I mean, really, every song is just, except for maybe, like, Bones.
Yeah.
is like, in my opinion, like a really, really good, a very solid track. And I think that, including High and Dry, which I love, Fake Plastic Trees, which I love, Bulletproof, I Wish I Was, is slow as hell and kind of boring, but I still love the way that Johnny's like that sort of twinkling electric guitar bit just kind of like dances over the top in the chorus.
Yeah.
And
No, it's good.
like everything, like the acoustic guitars are so lush and warm and inviting.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just I mean, this is the Radiohead album I actually, again, like that. This, along with bits and pieces of OK Computer, was what got me into Radiohead, and that's why I've carved out this spot for it.
Yeah, I mean, and you could actually see on Spotify, at least, most of the popular songs are from either OK Computer or the Bends.
Right.
And that's for a reason. It's really like their most accessible. It makes sense from the average music listener. I remember, I forgot to mention this. High and Dry is the first Radiohead song I heard other than Creep. So I knew
Oh,
Radiohead for Creep, and then one day I was in a restaurant or like some like bar and grill, and they were playing High and Dry, and I Shazammed it, and I was like, oh, that was Radiohead, and that was kind of like the seed to my exploration with the band. So these are really great songs, and as you said, and I said previously, definitely start off with this album. It's fantastic.
yeah, yeah. I mean, either I would say you can't really go wrong with either OK Computer or the Bends as your first foray into Radiohead.
Would you say it's pretentious to say to start off with the Bends so you could appreciate the jump to OK Computer, or should you just listen to the songs for the sake of the music?
I think, I don't know. I mean,
It's
I
good.
don't
It's a
know
good
if
question.
like, yeah, it is a good question. I would say if you don't start with the bends, you'll still be able to appreciate that jump from the bends to OK Computer. Um, Once you have soaked in Radiohead for a little bit longer. Um, but I do think there's merit to being able to sort of track that progression.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think there's like a hard rule, because like
I would just
I
not,
listened to a
I would say
bunch.
like don't start your Radiohead journey with like Amnesiac.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would, and I feel bad for anyone who did, because they would just be like, what the fuck is this? Is this I thought this was Creep, and then yeah, or like King of Limbs.
Right.
They'd be like, this is the same. This isn't the same band. Um, all right, Dylan. Now that you're on a roll, why don't you lead us off with your number one pick? Because I think
All
we know
right.
what this
So
one is.
yeah. So by process of elimination, number
Anima.
one. Yeah.
Their solo work.
Enema. So number one, I gotta give it to my home dog, OK Computer,
Okay, Boomer.
OK Boomer. Just because this is, to me, not only is it, I think, like, a definitive album for not just Radiohead, but for almost like a generation of specific, a rock genre.
Right.
I also think that there is something for everybody on this album. At least if you're a rock fan. There are soft and emotional moments. Like, for example, I think my favorite song on this album, Let Down. And then there's just like gut-busting hard rock, like in Paranoid Android. Or Airbag. And, so it's funny that you mentioned, that kind of weird compartmentalization journey, or whatever you want to call it, that Paranoid Android takes you down, sort of moving from one box to another, or one
Hitchhiker's
room
Guide to
to
the
another.
Galaxy.
Yeah. Well, so you know that
Mm-hmm.
idea of having like 3 or 4 different songs in one song. I think we've talked about this. Comes from "Happiness Is a Warm Gun"
Yes. Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
Beatles. Yeah. So just like that song has like so many different ideas that are explored that are just kind of like tethered together, in one song. That's what was sort of the motivation to write Paranoid Android the way that he did. And actually, so Paranoid Android was the first Radiohead song I ever listened to. I think I was driving with somebody and they put the song on and they were just like, give it a second. And I was like, all right. And then when that, like that first like power slide that Johnny Greenwood does on the distorted guitar,
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck was that? And you don't have much of you don't have much time to like think to yourself, what the hell was that? Before it's just do 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 do, and it's just all over the place. And I remember the first time I saw the music video, I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's just, and then again, like I don't know. It's just a lot of good memories with this album, and I think that I love the end riff on. Oh no, not the end riff, like the do 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 from Subterranean Homesick Alien. That's sort of like that lead line that Johnny Greenwood plays.
Oh yeah. Do do do.
Lucky. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Shit. I do really like this album. It's so good. There's really, like you said, there. I don't think you can listen to this and not find a song that you like. Maybe not "Fit or Happier." That one's difficult.
Yeah. That one was. I thought I was like, all right, what 16-year-old libertarian kid wrote this?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, "Fit or Happier" is a song in the middle
It's like
of the
a
album.
self-help guide.
Yeah, it's like it's read in like a Stephen Hawking computer thing, right? It's like it just kind of sounds like a robot is talking to you, or talking to itself, right?
Right. It's like it's like a self-help guide for dystopian. It's like it's a self-help guide in the Blade Runner universe. It's
Right.
like, no more microwave dinners, or like what like drink less alcohol, whatever. But in a robot voice. It's basically the Hantiumi voice from fucking King Gizzard.
Yeah. I don't know if you had anything specific to say about this. Well, anything else, but one thing that I do find quite interesting is that I don't really process this all the time, but this album came out in 1997, and I still feel like a lot of these themes, both sonically and lyrically, still make sense in today's world, which is why it has such an accessibility to it. Like I feel like that it's still kind of it doesn't have a happy forecast for our society. We live in a society.
We live in a society.
Yeah. But like, if you listen to this, this is still something that's applicable. It still kind of feels like it fits the mood of what I'm living in right now, I don't know. I still feel like we're on the verge of an apocalypse, and this album still makes me feel like it's plausible.
This is a very Joker-fied album.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, what would you say are your favorite tracks on this one?
Let Down, number 1. I want to say Paranoid Android, number 2, as cliche as that is. And maybe Lucky or No Surprises for number 3.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, man. So, let's see here. I would have to say Karma Police only because that's one of the first songs. Like if you had to think of 5 songs that you heard from Radiohead to start off, I would say Karma Police. So that one's a classic. I love No Surprises. I love Lucky. Subterranean Homesick Alien I like a lot too. Um, Paranoid Android finally grew on me, and I do enjoy it. I think it's a great
Right.
song. I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite, but it definitely would show up on a playlist for Radiohead's greatest hits.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean, I think, I put this as number one because I think, not just because it's the definitive Radiohead album, in my opinion, but I don't know. I think they were just, like, they managed to kind of, like, hit upon every important, I guess, musical corner in this, and I think they did it super well.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few faults in that album.
Yeah. So so why don't we talk about In Rainbows for you?
Without further ado, I would like to talk about my number one pick.
Sorry, did I blow it?
It's
Don't
yeah,
give it away. Sorry.
it's In Rainbows, as one could say. Um, Man, this is an album. This is an album. That's all I have to say. It's an album. For those of you who like albums, this is good for you. Okay, so as we were talking before, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, the first few albums that I listened to from Radiohead were The Bends, Kid A, and OK Computer. And those were just like when, for the first year or two when I was listening to them, from like freshman to sophomore year, I thought those were really like the only albums I should listen to by Radiohead. And then, probably at the beginning of junior year, I started to explore their other stuff because I kind of made a goal to listen to everything by them in order. And I arrived at In Rainbows, and oh my god, this was an emotional revelation for me. I knew a couple songs from them previously, like Weird Fishes and actually Jigsaw Falling into Place, but prior to that, I hadn't really listened to the full album. So I would say, oh man, what was it? I want to say it was probably February of my junior year of college. I discovered this. So this was right before I started actually around the time that I started my spring semester. Now I was going through a difficult argument with a very close friend of mine, and we were having trouble, and it was kind of going all over the place. I was very emotional all the time and kind of stressed out. And this album felt like a warm hug that I needed for a long time. Every song on this album I love. Now, Dylan was saying how a lot of these songs are kind of filler. It's fair to say that there are a lot of, like, Faust Arp is not much of a song, really. All I Need is pretty good, but it's kind of slow and doesn't really have anything. I cannot stress enough that from beginning to end, this is the quickest 42 minutes you'll ever listen to. And it'll move you. As I was saying before, I'm not one to listen to lyrics much, but there are certain songs I listen to, and I've spoken to Dylan about this, and we share the same phenomenon. But there are songs that don't really need to speak to you in lyrics. They can speak to you with the way that they sound, and that sounds super pretentious. But a perfect example of that is Reckoner. Reckoner is a 4 minute and 50-second song, and all I can say is that the build up and the arrangement of this song is just so beautiful. This is an abstract painting that came to life, and I mean, oh my god, I can't even describe. All I can say is that this is an anecdote. I remember one time that you picked me up when I was visiting home from college. We went to get coffee or something, and this song came on, and we shut up. We like stopped talking to listen to the album, to the song, which just is such a great display of how beautiful the song is. Like towards the middle of the song, it starts to add more layers, add some strings and some other synth qualities to it. And the last 15 seconds is easily the most beautiful measures of Radiohead that I've listened to. It's moved me to tears. Uh, I can't speak for Dylan, but I'm sure it's moved him emotionally as well. This is a fantastic album, and this track is easily one for the decade, at least for 2010. Body Snatchers is another fantastic one. Now I'm kind of going all over the place with this, but this is another album where they kind of reach different paths. Overall, I the best way I could describe it is like an abstract art rock album. 15 Step is like an odd time signature, jazzy, alternative rock song. It's a good way to introduce the album. Body Snatchers follows next, and it's very almost kind of like Muse, if that makes it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like the fast paced, distorted guitars. It's fun. I like running to it sometimes.
I've always said that Muse is Radiohead for people who had friends in high school.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Nude is another really good one. I think this is. Did you say that this was Thom Yorke's best vocal performance?
I said it was between this and Moonshaped Pool
Okay.
for his best vocals.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Yeah. Nude is a great track. Weird Fishes and our Peggy. I don't really know what to say about this. This is another beautiful song. It kind of feels like you are swimming in a pool you're swimming in a moon-shaped pool with distant relatives or something. I don't know, like
Distant relatives.
no, not distant relatives. Ancestors or something.
Right.
It's very beautiful. I highly recommend it. I actually recommend this song to a lot of my friends, and they end up liking it and start listening to Radiohead. I'm kind of a music missionary, and this is one of my go-to songs. All I Need, Faust Arp, not that special, but in context of the album, I like it. I'd listen through it anyway. Reckoner, I already spoke about. House of Cards is another really solid track. I'm not particularly moved by it, but it's definitely a smooth, soothing song to listen to. Jigsaw Falling Into Place, I love this song. I know you're not big on this one, right, Dylan?
No, I mean I like it. It's just like I don't know. Maybe I just haven't like. For me, I don't really. Once I listen to it and it hits, I listen to it like a million times over and over again. So maybe I just haven't crossed that barrier to entry yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this one I like quite a bit because it follows a relatively linear build up musically, and I do enjoy it. They also have a fun music video if you want to look it up on YouTube. They're basically just wearing GoPros, and
Oh yeah.
It's a good one. I like this one quite a bit. Videotape is the last track of the album. I don't necessarily think that this was the best way to end the album because most of this is very artistic and abstract, and this is kind of a depressing way to end the album. And I don't really think this was a depressing album. I think if they actually switched Reckoner for Videotape and they ended the album with Reckoner,
Oh man, that.
oh my god, I'm sure anyone's music playing device would just melt. It's oh man, that would be a great way to end it. I should write to Thom Yorke and say, can you do a reissue and put Reckoner last?
The album was almost going to be called Reckoner.
Yeah, I remember that. And this one came out for free, which caused a lot of turbulence in the music community because
Was it 2007?
Yeah, it was 2007. So they released this album out. You didn't have to pay to download it. So it was a, free to play. And
They also released all the samples. 'Cause, like, you know, you can download the album, but you can't use the samples.
yeah, it was a free to play. And
They also released all the samples. 'Cause, like, you know, you can download the album, but you can't use the samples. like all the tracks from pretty much all the songs. So you could like.
Oh, you mean like a few months ago when the guy threatened to, when he held the demos ransom?
Was that a few months ago? I thought it was like years ago. Like I thought it was like when they released the album.
Are
Like
you
they
talking? Are
literally.
you talking about In Rainbows or just the OK
No,
Computer sessions?
in rainbows, in rainbows.
Oh,
Like
oh, oh.
like I actually like I have the tracks, like the official tracks of like the keyboards and the strings from Reckoner.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah,
don't.
they're like, yeah, you can like sample it and use it in your own shit.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty cool.
I'll have to check that out. No, what I was referring to was there was a guy that was able to steal the demos from the OK Computer sessions and like other sessions in general from Radiohead, and he was like, "Oh, give me like $1 million or else I'm gonna release it." And then Radiohead was like, "Fuck you, we'll just release it now." And the guy's like, "Okay." So that was a pretty fun thing.
I did hear about that.
Yeah, which is how I found out that True Love Waits was originally written for the OK Computer sessions, but
Mm.
I don't think anyone is interested right now. Yeah, I don't want to keep rambling about In Rainbows. I cannot stress this one enough. It's a beautiful album. I think it tests your patience if this is the first thing you listen to, because there are some songs that could be considered filler. Uh, but this is one of the albums where you could easily listen to it from beginning to end, and it's just smooth sailing. It's a very beautiful, cohesive album. It moves me emotionally. Dylan doesn't dislike it, so So yeah,
I love this album. I just put it third because the other two just kind of narrowly beat it.
you're dead to me. But no. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, I guess. All right, Dylan, we did it. We got through Radiohead's studio album discography. How do you feel?
That's you know exhausted, but in a like I've just run a marathon.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you've informed our listeners or inspired anyone to take a deep dive into Radiohead and
Well, I
become an
would hope so.
intellectual?
Well, yeah, if whoever's out there, if you haven't given Radiohead the time of day, I promise that once you do, you'll understand why Radiohead fans are all so annoying. And yeah, I mean, it's just it's a dense body of work that they have, but each thing they do is like a different. It's like a different statement, and I think that your idea of In Rainbows being that sort of alive abstract painting is pretty apt. But I'd take it a step further and say that all their albums kind of have that. You're walking around in a scene that they've constructed for you, kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And it's just a wildly different dimension, no matter from album to album. I guess
Yeah.
that's what I'd say.
I mean, it is definitely worth taking a deep dive. One thing I will say, not only is it's rewarding for multiple reasons. You find a new album or a song that you really like. Maybe you won't like everything that they put out, which is fair. I mean, no one's gonna be 100% with a band, but when you're more aware of what they've done, I don't know about you, Dylan, but I think the meme community around this band is superb. They are a funny bunch, I must say.
No one hates themselves and Radiohead as much as Radiohead fans hate Radiohead and themselves. I'd say.
That's fair. But yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in and listening to this. Dylan, I don't know if you had any closing remarks, but I feel like we've given them enough to think about today.
Yeah, I mean, they actually just put There Will Be Blood back on Netflix, and that might be my weekend, or part of my weekend.
Amazing. I should probably go back and watch that again too. I remember I saw a scene from that movie, and I was like, crap, I really enjoyed watching this movie.
Well,
But
let me know. We can do a little Netflix party.
we could do a Netflix party. That's great. But for those of you who are wondering what we're going to talk about next, because everyone loves hearing what Dylan has to say about music. I love hearing what he has to say, and I enjoy. They
Do they
do.
love hearing what
I
I have
do.
to say?
The one comment from my dad was like, I really enjoyed listening to Dylan talk about Led Zeppelin, and we got through
Thank you,
Radiohead.
Sheldon.
Yeah, of course. And we have a couple other bands that we need to take a dive into. I know
Yeah,
we.
I think the next episode or the next couple episodes that we've been discussing, we might take a step now into like the 21st century.
Yeah, we could possibly take a look at some modern music. I don't know if I'm thinking of the same thing as you are, but I know there is quite a special dude hailing from Australia, who has a pretty wild reindeer. No, sorry, I'm not saying no. It's a tame impala. Is that what you're referring to?
Wild reindeer. I was like, what the hell is he talking? yeah, right. We're gonna go down to the beach, take a whole handful of mushrooms and other hallucinogens, and we're gonna have ourselves a great time.
That's true. We'll have some toast.
Bloody tame impala.
We'll talk about the man down under.
Down under.
Down under.
And then maybe a subsequent episode we could do is like just talking about all the psychedelic rock that's coming out of that whole area.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in Australia over the past 10 years, but all of them recently discovered psilocybin and LSD. I don't know what they did, but they had a psychedelic renaissance, and I honestly think we could spend the next few episodes talking about that. We have Tame Impala, Tosh Sultana, Pond,
King
Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
You've got the bloody psychedelic porn crumpets.
Are they Australian?
Yeah, they're from Perth.
Jesus
they're from like
Christ.
the same fucking part of Australia as Tame Impala.
That's ridiculous.
What is in the water?
Psilocybin.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, I think we'll wrap it up. For those of you who listen and enjoyed it, please like it and give it a comment. If there's a band that you want us to talk about, feel free to leave the comment. That was a little redundant, but that's okay. So it's been an hour and a half. If there are bands that you want us to not talk about so that you're not embarrassed, that's fine. All right. Good night. Farewell. Dylan, thanks again for dropping by. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, and keep on rocking in the free world, and doot-doot-a-loot-doo.
Doot.
We'll do a Nardwar episode too.
Perfect. All right, here I'm gonna stop recording now.